Hi there. I wanted to talk to you today about the action scheduler in WP-Cron and how we can determine what might be the root cause of these things not working. But before we get into that, I'd like to talk a little bit about the symptoms that we might be dealing with. So primarily, one of the big things we're going to hear about is subscription renewals not working. Subscription orders are not, the renewal orders are not being generated. Another pretty common one is the WooCommerce database update is stuck. Analytics data maybe isn't updating like you would expect. Automate Woo workflows are not running. Similarly, follow-up emails. Sync jobs maybe aren't working. So think Square, Google listings and ads. That's specific to the action scheduler. Facebook sync jobs, I think, use WP-Cron, but kind of the same thing. If WP-Cron isn't working, those aren't going to work. Quite a bit more bookings, confirmation emails, completed booking emails. Those are all scheduled via WP-Cron. In-cart bookings are cleared out via WP-Cron. So think anything that is done on a schedule or might be affected by these kinds of problems. So the action scheduler is it's a software library that was built to manage large queues of tasks that need to be run in the background. And it's a software library and it's meant to be included with WordPress plugins, so there's no server access required. You can get a whole lot more in-depth information about the action scheduler at actionscheduler.org. WP-Cron is a system that's provided by WordPress core, and it's how WordPress handles scheduling time-based tasks, such as checking for available updates for your themes and plugins on the WordPress.org repository. Also for scheduling posts. The cron part of that, just for reference, comes from the Unix system called cron, which does handle running recurring and scheduled tasks. WP-Cron is a bit of a pseudo-cron, though, in that it doesn't fire its tasks just automatically. It does need a trigger, and that trigger is a page view, page load, whether that's somebody looking at your site in the browser or some sort of a request being made otherwise. Jetpack downtime monitor, for instance, is a really good way to generate traffic to your site. If you don't have traffic enough to trigger those tasks, you can read a whole lot more about WP-Cron at developer.wordpress.org/plugins/cron. So there is a relationship between WP-Cron and the action scheduler, and that is that the action scheduler runs on a WP-Cron schedule. So every minute, the action scheduler run scheduler hook is supposed to run. In addition to that, though, the action scheduler also hooks into the shutdown hook on any WP admin requests and tries to run its jobs then via an async loopback request. And that kind of gets us into the common failure point is often loopback requests. The loopback request is, simply put, it's when a website or a server tries to make a request to itself. And WooCommerce, WordPress, all of these systems assume that the loopback requests work. If the loopback requests are not working as we expect, then none of this functionality that relies on that is going to work as expected either. We can usually attribute these failures to server misconfiguration. Firewall rules might be blocking internal requests. There might be a configuration that's intentionally disallowing internal requests. We may have a misconfigured DNS resolution on the server. Other things, security plugins maybe have settings for this. A pretty common one would be like a coming soon page, a coming soon type plugin. And the way to describe that would be this loopback request is sending the request to itself, and it ends up encountering that same coming soon message because that request is unauthenticated and can't get past it. The real important take-home message here, though, is that the failures of loopback requests are not caused by WooCommerce or WooCommerce extensions. And we can get into this. We've got some data between the system status report and the WordPress site health tool that can help us make really short work of this, figuring out what the root cause is. Reliable ways to test this is to schedule a post. And so let me do that real quick before I continue. So this will allow me to schedule a post. I'm just doing that for a couple of minutes in the future. We'll come back to the post screen so I can see here that we're scheduled. Let me get into the system status report. When I get one of these reports, two things to put together. Number one is at the bottom of the system status report, we have this generated at time and date stamp, and we can compare that to the daily cron. This is when our next daily cron is scheduled. And this should always be at a time and date in the future. And in this one, we can see that this was generated on November 28th, and our last daily cron was scheduled for October 28th, almost a month ago. And we can also see evidence of this in our pending actions. We can also see that this pending action is overdue for about a month now. So we can kind of assume that something happened on the 28th of October that caused things to stop working. So those are some really good, like this one here is the number one tip off. If that next daily cron is past due, then there is likely a problem with WP-Cron. And we can go to the site health tool here under tools, site health. And this is going to tell us your site could not complete a loopback request. And so this is kind of when we see this, we know that that is the underlying problem that is causing WP-Cron to not work, actions to not fire when they're supposed to. That's going to affect requests that are made via WP-Cron as well as the ones that are on the shutdown hook. And sometimes we might get an error in here. And so when we have this, that's kind of it. We can take this back to the host, wherever this site is hosted at, and send that error to them and ask them to get that condition corrected. And that is kind of it. Let's go back here to our scheduled post though, and I'm going to refresh this. So our time for the post has passed and we've missed the schedule. So that's kind of an easy thing to hand off to the website owner, the merchant. Just a real simple test that doesn't require anything is to go ahead and schedule that post and see if it gets misscheduled. And we can let them know at that point that until this situation is corrected, until these posts are scheduled on time, that they should probably expect that none of these other things are going to work either.